that now and talk about your illustrious career and life. So for the listeners who don't know, Dominic, where did you grow up?
Well, I grew up in West London, Ladbroke Grove area. I was actually born in St Stephen's Hospital, and my first residence was Queenstown Road in Battersea, and we travelled from there in about 67, 68. We moved to St Mark's Road, which is like Notting Hill, North Kensington.
Know it very well.
And lived there up to the age of about 15, 16.
And you was pretty good friends with my Uncle Tommy. So when did you meet Tommy? Was it when you first moved over to West London?
Well, I met Tommy through a long-time friend of mine called Darren Still, who's Tommy's cousin.
He's my cousin as well, yeah.
Yeah, and Darren lived just off St Mark's Road on Cambridge Gardens, you know, so I've known Darren all my life. And that's how I got to know Tommy.
Yeah, God rest his soul.
Every time, man, every time.
So what sort of music was you listening to growing up?
Me and Darren, we were mods, and we used to listen to a lot of like the old 60s music. We weren't, the Small Faces, all of that, and a lot of the black music from the era, like the soul music, particularly the ska. But being in Ladbroke Grove, reggae music was always in the background, the foreground. It was the soundtrack from the carnival. I suppose the watershed moment came. I was working in a record shop on Portobello Road, and we used to hear a lot of records, different genres of music. This is around 79, 80, and I had some friends who were a bit older than me, Nick and Mike, and they were mods, and they used to dress quite well, go to Moss Brothers, buy shirts, and they were into, apart from the old 60s music, they had 3 records they used to play all the time. Cocaine in My Brain, Dillinger.
Bad tune.
Barnabas Collins, Lone Ranger.
Yeah.
And 3-Piece Chicken and Chips.
Trinity.
Rankin Trevor. And that was all purchased from a shop called Maroon Tunes and Daddy Calls in Soho. But really everything changed for me when I heard Eka Mouse, Wadu Dem. And that is when dancehall really kind of opened up with Yellow Man and all those great Scientist albums with the amazing artwork from Tony McDermott.
Yeah.
And that sort of opened the door, and I was already writing at the time, Zigzag, New Musical Express, and I started to write more about reggae music because that's what I was into, and it was the passion that I developed, and it was what was happening nowadays. So, you know, the Yardbirds, the Small Faces, it's great music, but it's from a previous generation. And dancehall was for us, it was for the young people. And the DJing, toasting as it used to be called. And we used to try to mimic and copy the styles. And I first went to Jamaica in '83. It was as a journalist to interview artists for NME, Black Echoes, The Voice, God Bless Val McCalla, you know, and Flip Fraser. And towards the end of my stay, Billy Boyo, Little John, and in particular Barrington Levy encouraged me to get on the mic. That time I was just patronising or copying lyrics that Brigadier used to DJ. Because Brigadier, to me, was like the unsung hero. Everyone was talking about Yellow Man. But we used to get a lot of what you call yard tapes from various shops. Desmond's Hip City in Brixton, Jalub Music, Virgo, those sounds there. And, you know, Brigadier had a tongue rolling style that was unique. And I went to see him at Acklam Hall in Ladbroke Grove in '82. And I said, yeah, that's what I want to do. So when I went to Jamaica, I was a little apprehensive and beforehand because it wasn't really done, that kind of thing, you know. Apart from myself, I think the only person at the time, and he was a lot more prolific in London, was Francis, better known as Snowman. He passed away recently, who was on a sound called Jam Down Rockers. But if you went outside of your safety zone or your immediate catchment area, you could be disrespected if you were a white kid trying to talk patois.
Yeah.
And that came across very much in the film Babylon. Yeah, it wasn't like nowadays with everyone up and down and the bus conductor says Wagwan and all of that. It was very, very different. It was very, very polarized, you know, and we see a lot of that energy coming back with all the divide and rule tactics. So anyway, towards the end of my stay in Jamaica, I got to DJ on Romantic Sound, which was Little John's sound in Macquarie Lane. And I come back to England, still didn't really DJ on these sounds, got to chat the odd lyrics on, you know, Diamonds, and then I started introduce myself to Saxon, who were the number one sound in the UK at the time. And I spoke to Musclehead, Dennis, and I mean, they put me through the test, so to speak, and I wouldn't have had it any other way, but they gave me a position to come and DJ on the sound, and that got cut short when I ended up going to prison, going to jail. Before that, I went back to Jamaica in '84, and all the people who I was around had gone to New York, like John Joe, Billy Boyo, Little John. They'd all gone on tour with Volcano Sound. Jaro were the leading sound. So that's when I started to take the DJ thing more serious, and I used to DJ with Early B and Super Cat and Junior Cat on a sound called Soul Imperial. But it was still very much a hobby kind of thing. And when I went back to England, I ended up going to jail, and that was really when I decided to write lyrics, study the game, and actually learn how to do this properly, rather than just having a bit of fun in between doing my interviews. So that was basically how the whole thing started. And there's a lot of backstories. When I first arrived in Jamaica, the first night Prince Farai had been killed, and Hugh Mandel died later. Earlier, the New Musical Express, they championed reggae music. It was the greatest thing in the world. But that all changed after the death of Bob Marley. And I think they really saw dancehall as a bit of a joke. And then someone wrote a letter saying, listen, you know, you need to be more inclusive. And myself and Penny Real, God rest his soul, we had to fight tooth and nail for dancehall to be given some space in the media. It wasn't like how it was now, you know. And interviewed Gregory Isaac. That got me the front cover of Black Echoes magazine. But by the time I come out of jail and went back to Jamaica, I still did interviews, but I was more focused on trying to establish myself as a DJ. I had lyrics, and through George Pang, I became reacquainted with Peter Metro, who literally took me under his wing and steered the boat to make it more professional, not just, you know. He explained to me that the long lyrics that you talk with storylines is all good and well, but you need commercial lyrics because it's girls that run the dance. And so, absolutely. And that's why artists like Penny Irie have done so well, because Penny Irie was the man, you know what I mean? John Wayne's brother, you know? And Johnny P was a great commercial DJ. So we started DJing on Metro Media, but I'd done a show at Tropical Theatre on Slight Road with Tiger and Briggy. But it was still very much early days, and I came back to England and I recorded Computer Trim in Clapham Junction and Gussie Prento with the rhythm track. Took that to Jamaica to release it, put it on the Powerhouse label to give it a bit of prestige, and that was like my first release. You know what I mean?
And what year was that? So that was what, like 87?
I recorded Computer Trim in the summer of 86.
Yeah.
And it was released at the beginning of 1987.
Wow. So you mentioned Brigadier Jerry, and you talked about Ekamas. So who else would you say was your inspirations, like DJ-wise?
Well, the DJ thing is like hip-hop and like rap music. So there's very few artists that are consistent throughout their recorded material. Probably include myself in that. But they have little moments of brilliance, and you inspired by that, you know. So for instance, Pompidou with synthesizer voice, you know what I mean, those tunes stand the test of time. But the main inspiration for my DJing was Brigadier. You know, Big Youth, big influence.
My favourite, Big Youth.
And influenced by people that weren't necessarily DJs, but you know, let's keep it real. I'm a white kid from West London, so I've got to bring a bit of my culture into it. You know, people like Ian Jury with that real sort of sardonic, dry wit.
Love it.
You know, or taking little bits of dialogue from films, like Performance and films like that, or the dialogue that Michael Caine would use, or something like that, to sort of maintain that we're not appropriating black culture. You know, my first tune, you know, Cockney and Yardie, I was giving it London talk. And if you look at the whole issue of cultural appropriation, if we're honest, every format of modern music has been appropriated from black people. Straight from Robert Johnson, the Mississippi Delta. That's where the Rolling Stones, the Yardbirds, Led Zeppelin, they got all their energy from that. What's important is you add your own twist to it, and then by doing that, you create something new or different to inspire future generations, you know?
Yeah. And we touched on it earlier, but you've done quite a lot of touring, both in Jamaica, and also you went over to New York. Is there any interesting stories, ones that we can put on the radio anyway, of tours, things that either went wrong or went well, like over in New York or JA?
Yeah, there was one tour we went on. I was with Louis Rankin and Sluggy and some other artists, and the promoter had not paid the bill for the hotel we're staying in, and he kept putting it off.
Sounds like feel good.
Yeah, and I had to basically go to the reception and buy time, and in the end it all kicked off, and the state troopers were removing us from the hotel at gunpoint.
Oh wow.
Incidents. The Apollo Theatre was one of the greatest moments outside of Sunsplash and that, where I got called up on stage by KRS-One, Christmas Day at the Apollo, and we went up there and ripped it apart, and that opened the doors to doing a whole load of more work with KRS and BDP in like 89 and 1990, you know?
Wow, that's pretty cool, man. Pretty cool.
And, you know, we went to do a show in a place called the St Mary's Park in the South Bronx, Steve Biko Festival. Me, Chris, I think there are a few other artists. One of the Last Poets was there, and it was like, it was in a pretty rough neighbourhood. You'd walk past, you'd see people shooting up on the street, you know, a lot of Hispanics, Puerto Ricans, a lot of desperate looking people. And when you watch films like Taxi Driver and you see that kind of grime and that New York paranoia, well, we lived that, you know, through that era there. And we go to the South Bronx, St Mary's Park, and Chris saw it apart, and it was brilliant. So it was almost like returning to the birthplace of hip hop, the same way I went and lived in jungle to the birthplace of reggae music. And those were the moments that stood out, you know. The benefit concert for Yusuf Hawkins, a racist murder in New York, in Brooklyn, Bensonhurst. There's a big show on 125th Street, and I was going to go and be part of that. But Chris was all the way down the other end, and I couldn't get my pass to get backstage. I see someone else, and I waved my hand to him, no hesitation, jostled his way through the crowd, handed me my little armband. Yeah, come through, Dominic. And that was Professor Griff from Public Enemy.
Wow.
So Professor Griff, for all intents and purposes, has been portrayed as someone who is anti-Semitic, who doesn't like white people, and he'd be the last person you'd expect to get Dominic a pass to come in to perform at a concert, you know, to protest against a racist murder. But Griff's one of the genuine people. He's very active on the internet. He's very in tune with what is really going on, along with Cat Williams and people like that. But he, well, I think Public Enemy done him dirty, to tell the truth, you know. And then the next, around that same summer, was a new music seminar. And they brought Tipper Lee and Rapper Robert up from Jamaica, and Daddy Freddie and Simon Harris came over from London. And I was there, and I was on the bill, and we were hanging out with other rappers. There's a crew called Digital Underground, who had this dancer at the time who wasn't well known. His name was Tupac.
Wow.
So it's me, Tupac and Tretch, and we're all hanging out together, going to various parties, because some person would have their gig at SOBs, another one would have a gig at the Palladium, and so you'd be travelling between the different seminars and parties that were happening and meeting different people in the industry. We were at the Marriott Hotel when that well-documented incident happened between NWA and Ice Cube, at the big fight.
Yeah.
And basically, the day before, me and Tretch were at a party as part of the seminar, and everyone was freestyling on the mic. I think Eka Mouse was there, and then this big lump got up on stage, seemed really friendly, larger than life, called King Son, one of the most slept on rappers in the New York scene. And it was King Son who basically threw down and stopped Ice Cube from being overpowered by NWA, if I'm honest, you know. But, you know.
Hip-hop history. So there is an iconic, famous video of you on stage in Jamaica performing with Ninja Man. So when you went on stage and you performed in front of that massive crowd, what was the feeling like?
That wasn't I'd say a particularly massive crowd. Like around the holidays, Easter, bank holidays and all that, they would have shows at Fort Clarence Beach.
Yeah.
And you get a big crowd there. And they had various dances there, various shows and all of that. And I was on the show there with Ninja at Fort Clarence. But I was DJing on Jaro alongside with Ninja Man, you know. I went to visit him the other day when I was in Jamaica as well.
Yeah,
you know.
One of my favourites. Free Ninja Man. Free Ninja Man.
Listen, Ninja Man has a stronger case for a miscarriage of justice than certain artists who've been released, yeah? Let's just say that.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame.
It's all very much circumstantial. I don't even want to elaborate because
no.
his appeal is still underway and all of that, you know?
Right, so then 8 Man, well, I didn't know until recently when you enlightened me that 8 Man was a record label as well. I thought it was to do with all your artwork, but...
Well, 8 Man started as a magazine.
Yeah.
And 8 Man was a nickname given to me in West London.
I was going to ask that. How did that come about?
Well, before it became gentrified, Notting Hill was full of a lot of empty, abandoned buildings.
Yeah.
And we used to climb around in and out of them, upside down and all about. And we went into one building, I was about 8 or 9, and we found someone dead in there. I can't remember if it was definitely them, sorry to sound grim, but there was a famous incident where Steve Peregrine Hook, who was part of T-Rex, took a turn for the worst, and he was found dead in an empty building in Notting Hill. So terrible, terrible stuff. And yeah, we used to play around these buildings and climb in and out the windows, so I was quite agile and
so he was like a Spider-Man, really.
Yeah, a bit of a daredevil and all of that. And that's how the name came about. And I started the magazine in 97. And the benchmark for that was the Beastie Boys with Grand Royale. I wanted to sort of combine a little bit of the mixture of all different kinds of cultures, a lot of retro stuff, you know, to create something. And, you know, for a little while it was kind of successful. The label happened by accident. Toshi Naganishi from Major Force gave me a track to put out, and I went to see Mike at Goya, God bless Mike Slocum, and he put the track out, and then from that things started to evolve, you know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people making music who need a platform so people can hear what they're doing, so it wasn't that difficult. And we put out an LP, we put out tracks with Skinny Man, The Scratch Perverts, Horace Andy. We even put out a track with Grey, which was the band that Jean-Michel Basquiat was in, you know? So, we done our thing.
So when did you actually start doing artwork? When did you start drawing and painting? And because you've been doing it for quite a while, haven't you?
I've been doing it from school, and I was very good at school, and that was really the pathway that a lot of my family and my parents wanted me to follow. And but I went to Jamaica, and it was only really when my mum passed away, I'm sitting down thinking, overthinking. I'm sure anyone who's lost their mum knows how it is. Everything changes. I thought, I don't want to sit down thinking and then start drinking and blah blah blah. So I started drawing, and it was good. And so from that, I developed, got quite good at it. I mainly do it, you know, more not as a hobby, but something I like to do. I don't really push myself as much as I should do in the artwork. But there's a lot of other people in the music game. I mean, like Peter King from Saxon. He's a very good artist.
Yeah,
good
Tip
oil
said
paintings,
that.
you know what I mean?
That.
Yeah. You know? So it's, and even Eminem apparently is a good at illustrations and that. So, you know, we've all got many different talents and that. And, you know, it's just to utilise that, bless that, and try and pass on some energy to people to create something and stay positive, you know.
And it's very therapeutic, because I got locked up a few years ago. We won't go into detail, but to get through my days, I sat there and just drew pictures and done graffiti on bits of paper, and it was a way of just escaping the room and the mindset you're in and just getting lost in that bit of paper and creating something, putting all your mind into that so nothing else enters it. It's a bit like scuba diving. That's the only other thing that I've done where you have to concentrate 100% on what you're doing while you do it, otherwise things might go wrong.
No, I mean, I've never done scuba diving, but with the art, that's all that matters. There could be you're doing your picture and you're in mode. Could be a nuclear war going on outside. That's no concern. And, you know, I talk to people who make beats, you know. Performing on stage is the same kind of thing, where you'll be doing a show, and while you're actually on the stage, it doesn't matter whether you got the record deal you got a hit or you haven't. What matters is making that moment count.
That moment, living
Yeah.
in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, so you're going to be coming down to the Reggae Lounge and we're going to be exhibiting some of your artwork. We shared a fair bit of it online already. We're going to keep some surprises, and you've got a massive piece of Bob Marley that we're going to bring down and display. So yeah, guys, if you want to see some of Dominic's artwork and get the chance to buy it, most pieces will be on sale. There'll be a few that will be display only, but Friday the 26th of June at the Peckham Liberal Club, the Reggae Lounge, and absolutely looking forward to that one. Right, so we're going to carry on chatting for a couple of minutes, then we're going to drop some more tracks. So what's in the pipeline for Dominic? What we got coming up? Because I know, having spent the last few weeks with you a fair bit, I know you've got loads of things on the horizon, loads of projects. So what are you looking to do in the future?
Well, I wrote a book about my experiences in Jamaica and where I lived, and that is over 10 years old, and I've had to keep updating it and all that. But no excuses, I've been talking about this for far too long. That is the next thing we're going to do. And we want to do a book off the back of 8 Man, the magazine, which will showcase a lot of the illustrations. We've got some material we recorded in Jamaica in the last few years that should be coming out, but I think we're entering a new phase of life right now, you know?